Militaries have been using bicycles in warfare in different capacities since their creation. The first example being the French penny farthing. These featured a tall front wheel and were known for being a bit difficult and even dangerous to ride. They were mostly novelties, but even these ancient bikes were tested by the military to dispatch riders and scouts during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871. Various nations conducted tests to see if a bicycle could be used as an actual gun platform, and the 1890s saw a series of strange designs, including sidecar-mounted early machine guns and side-mounted rifles that could be fired from the handlebars. These were prototypes and not surprisingly failed to go very far past proof of concept. The first practical use of bicycle riders in an actual conflict was during the Second Anglo-Boer War in South Africa from 1899 through 1901. Bicycles were used by messengers, adapted into portable stretchers, and even used as a part of a specially designed two-man cycle to patrol the railroads. The First World War, which began as a very mobile and fluid conflict at first, seemed to be ideal for bicycles. Both sides used a large number of bikes to help troops get to the front lines quickly. But as the war bogged down into trench warfare, the two-wheeled machines were relegated to rear echelon duty. Cycles were used to some degree by sharpshooters in less static areas, as well as by scouts and, of course, dispatch riders. In military actions, bicycles have primarily been used in messenger and delivery roles, but there were several forces throughout history that have used bicycles actively in combat. The most daring of these units were the British Paratroopers in World War II. If jumping out of a plane isn't intimidating enough to start with, imagine jumping into a war zone with a 23.5-pound folding bicycle strapped in front of you. These brave paratroopers were used as part of the Normandy invasion on D-Day, deploying behind enemy lines and rapidly securing key objectives. The Birmingham Small Arms Company produced over 60,000 airborne folding paratrooper bicycles between 1942 and 1945. They were intended to give paratroopers a way to cover long distances after landing, while remaining quiet and undetected. The frames were primarily painted a khaki green color, though some of the bikes, which are now very rare, were painted brown at the end of the war due to a shortage of green paint. The paratroopers held the folded bikes out in front of them, with the wheels attached to the parachute suspension line as they jumped out of the planes and floated to the ground. Once on the ground, two wing nuts, one at the top of the frame and one at the bottom, could be loosened to unfold the bicycle, swinging the front wheel around from its position next to the rear wheel. Brackets attached to the frame allowed the paratroopers to strap their rifles to the bikes. On Tuesday, June 6, 1944, the Allied forces began the liberation of France with the invasion of Normandy, often referred to as D-Day. This was the largest seaborne invasion in history and included landing and airborne operations. The British 6th Airborne Division was tasked with securing the key tactical ground and bridges beyond the Normandy beaches. Controlling this ground would cut the Germans off from the rest of their forces and cause havoc for the German command by cutting off their communications. On D-Day, there was heavy resistance to Allied airborne operations from German anti-aircraft fire. This resulted in paratroopers being spread out or dropped in inopportune places. Scattered all over Normandy, the paratroopers were able to cover vast distances much faster than they could have on foot. They began to slowly link up with one another and conduct their missions. These bands, affectionately known as LGOPs by today's airborne community, or little groups of paratroopers, wreaked havoc on the German rear areas, often destroying German forces wherever they were encountered. One group of bicycle-equipped paratroopers traveled long distance to reinforce the critical Pegasus Bridge after its initial capture. Overall, throughout the war, the BSA bicycles were not used as much as initially planned. Their greatest use was by British and Canadian infantry during the invasions on D-Day and in Arnhem in the second wave. Exactly how many bicycles were used is unclear. The only remaining evidence is based on photographs. And in 1944, the introduction of military jeeps meant that these bicycles became even less important. Although these bicycles weren't used nearly as much as the original plan intended, they still provided a better and faster option than walking. Paratroopers could extend their range and travel much faster than on foot. Once their usefulness had ended, paratroopers often abandon their bicycles, with many bikes being recovered by civilians throughout the countryside in France. After World War II, there was still a fuel shortage in Europe, and civilians often used the old military bikes for everyday transportation. Today, original World War II bicycles are hard to come by and are considered a collector's item. Most of the remaining BSA bicycles are now in museums or private collections. These artifacts stand as a reminder of the brave paratroopers that carried them. Thank you for watching. Please comment your thoughts below, like and share this video, and subscribe for more interesting, inspiring stories of historical heroes.